Hi guys, my name is Matthew, and this is my review of Reverie by Ryan La Sala. Here we go. Reverie is a young adult novel. It is self-described as being The Magicians meets Inception, and that's actually a pretty accurate description for it. We follow Kane, who is a teenager. He recently lost a good portion of his memory, and he is struggling to discover the world around him and find his lost memories. What he discovers is that the world around him is not what it seems, and that he is not who he seems. One note I feel like I need to make is many reviewers are heralding this book as a gay novel or as a queer novel or something like that. I don't exactly know where the distinction is, but I was a little bit hesitant to read this book actually. For me, I was a little bit worried that it would be a book about being gay or something like that, or that honestly some young adult novels end up getting raunchy, and I'm not interested in raunchy things anyway, especially because the book was being heralded so much as being a gay novel. I kind of worried that that was going to be a thing. Honestly, this is just kind of a nice young adult novel where some of the characters happen to be gay, and I think that's great. And so I think if that is a hesitation for you, if you see all the reviews that are talking about how it's a queer novel or it's a gay novel or it's so great for LGBTQ stuff, which it may be, all those things, it's not, blatantly flamboyantly gay, and it's not like a novel where you're like, oh man, this stuff is really taking priority over the plot and the story. That's not this novel. This is just a good novel where characters happen to be gay and queer, and the relationships even take kind of a backseat to the plot and the story. Jumping right into my review, I'm going to just list some of my observations about the novel, roughly starting with some of my favorite things and then moving on in the list to some of the things that I didn't enjoy as much. My absolute favorite thing about this novel was all of the amazing descriptions and imagery and the creative ways that Ryan La Sala wrote his scenes. We are invited to participate in dozens of little mini worlds, and Ryan does an amazing job of describing these worlds and just helping us to just sink into them and enjoy them. It's creative the way he does it, and the bright and beautiful worlds are just absolutely spectacular. One of the greatest strengths of this novel by far. Another thing I really enjoyed about this novel was the premise itself, because it was unique. That's kind of a rarity when you're reading books these days. So many books just take a tried and true story and they give you a little bit of a twist or they change something slightly. This book is definitely unique. It's hard to find another book to even compare it to because it's so different than nearly anything else I've ever read. That can be a good thing, or it can be a little offsetting if you aren't prepared to read something very different. Overall, though, the narrative weirdness is really clever, and I enjoyed that aspect. I enjoyed actually reading a new book instead of just an old book with new outfit on it. The main character is gay. The main villain is a man in drag. There are several lesbian relationships in the book, and I think that that's wonderful. And the relationships in the book, like I've mentioned before, they take a backseat to the main plot and the story. They're not the front main element, but it's good that writers are feeling like they can actually write stories that include themselves in it, or that include people that are not like the norm. I think it's fun to learn about other people, and this book is actually a good way to do that, is to learn just feelings and kind of as a look at the inner psyche of someone who may be different than who you are, or maybe someone who's the same as who you are in ways that you weren't expecting. Another thing I really liked about this book is that the dialogue was actually believable. I think sometimes in young adult novels, it can, especially ones dealing with like relationships in any way, shape, or form, it can be really cringy, or it can just feel really fake. And I think that Ryan La Sala did a great job of writing out dialogue that actually seems believable. And I enjoyed reading some of the ways that that the teenagers interacted with each other and how they interact with their parents. It all felt like actual conversations that could actually be happening. A couple things that I didn't love as much. One of them was the pacing of this book. I think it was a tough thing to take on, a totally original and unique script and totally new story. And I think Ryan La Sala struggled a little bit with the pacing throughout. There were times when I felt, especially at the beginning of the book, where I felt like we could have moved on a little bit quicker and the reader could have had a little bit more information to keep us a little bit better engaged. The biggest negative about this novel is the same as its positive, actually. All the details that are written into this novel sometimes become distracting from the narrative itself or from the story. Oftentimes, as I was reading, I felt like the details were getting me bogged down just a little bit, and I was finding myself having to kind of snap my head out of it and just take a break. I feel like it could have used some polishing to help with the smoothness of it because, yeah, like I said, there were just distracting details. One thing that I feel like kind of fits in with this is our main character, Kane. Because he was a little uncertain of who he was, it was hard for me to connect well with him. There were times when he was talking about who he was in the past before he lost his memories and who he was now. I struggled to really connect with Kane as a character. I'm sure that's part of who he was, as someone who's hard to connect to, and that was who Ryan was trying to portray. But it's still, that's one of those details that was helping me to not be able to stay well engaged in the story. This book is great for anyone who enjoys urban fantasy. If you like softer magic systems and you enjoy kind of unique ideas, this book is great for you. I have no problem recommending it, and I think that you should really enjoy it. There are very little trigger warnings. Kissing, I think, is about as far as this book goes. Although there is some violence and a little bit of like blood, it's pretty minor and glossed over pretty quickly. So I'd say that is not a major trigger warning at all. This has been my review of Reverie by Ryan La Sala. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, stay safe out there.